you've ever explored in and around Buffalo, one building stands out among the rest. With its iconic towers, massive stonework, and sprawling landscape, the Richardson Olmsted campus is a breathtaking example of American architecture.
When I was first driving up, you just are inspired and awed by this building and really kind of taken aback by how majestic it is and what a significant piece of architecture it is.
This building is a National Historic Landmark, and it's because of three men: Frederick Law Olmsted, Henry Hobson Richardson, and Dr. Thomas Story Kirkbride.
Kirkbride designed an idea for how mentally ill people should be taken care of.
Within its walls is an equally important piece of history. It served as the Buffalo State Asylum for the Insane, with a revolutionary model for the treatment of people with mental illness. But as that era of treatment came to an end, the hospital closed, and its future was uncertain.
No one had the money to do anything. So this building really was sitting and no one had any idea what to do with it.
For decades and decades and decades, this complex had a negative impact on the community around it.
My first memory of being here is buildings surrounded by a chain link fence, and everything about it said you're not supposed to be here.
It was a big, scary, empty, falling apart set of buildings. We wanted to reverse that, not just for the building itself, but for the people who live around it.
It took decades to build. It endured decades of neglect. But in the hands of a community dedicated to preserving it, the Richardson Olmsted campus is being reimagined. Western New York has buildings designed by Louis Sullivan, Frank Lloyd Wright, and H.H. Richardson, what some call the Trinity of American architects. The people here are also proud of another architectural legacy: their own preservation of these structures in such a way that they hold a purpose for future generations.
They're more than just symbols. I think it's part of our nature as a society. It gives us kind of a guide or like a library of where we've come from and what our culture is built on and why that culture is important to us.
Many American cities saw rapid growth in the mid-1800s. Old buildings were demolished for new ones, each one more impressive than the last. As a key hub for transporting goods, Buffalo was no exception. But after its peak in the 1950s, it was hit hard by economic decline.
We have had a lot of buildings that have been preserved just because there hasn't necessarily been a new economic purpose to put that site or that building to.
A lot of it didn't get torn down like it did in a lot of places. So now people come and visit and they say, oh, wow, what great bones you have in the city of Buffalo, you know, and look at the fabric of the city. It's true. It's true, we didn't get rid of most of it.
We've seen some of our most iconic buildings saved as a result, like Louis Sullivan's skyscraper, the Guarantee Building, and Frank Lloyd Wright's opus, the Darwin Martin House Complex. Towering over them all is the massive historic preservation of the Richardson Olmsted campus. Its story as the Buffalo State Asylum for the Insane takes us back to the 1860s, at a key period in Buffalo's history. By the Civil War, Buffalo had only been incorporated as a city for about 30 years, but relentless growth in business and an influx of population was causing it to burst at the seams.
With that in mind, they invite Frederick Law Olmsted, who is now known as the father of landscape architecture, to come to Buffalo and create what we would now call a city plan.
While Olmsted and his partner Calvert Vaux were designing its landscape plan, Buffalo was in a bidding war with the cities of Lockport and Batavia to build a state asylum for the insane in western New York.
Buffalo does win by offering a supply of perpetual free water to the hospital. The hospital would never have to pay for water, never have to worry about it. The city would provide it for free. And they did for about 100 years.
Buffalo allotted 200 acres adjacent to Delaware Park. Olmsted and Vaux designed the grounds, while Henry Hobson Richardson, a young and relatively unknown architect, was chosen to design the buildings.
This was H.H. Richardson's largest commission of his entire career. It was the first place where he really perfected his personal style of architecture, which came to be called Richardsonian Romanesque. The most obvious thing about Romanesque architecture is it's made of stone, massive stone, and not highly finished stone, rough stone. It's treated in a very rough way, the way a medieval mason might have done. It became his signature style, but it also influenced the course of American architecture in the 1880s and 90s, when many other architects imitated what he had invented here at the State Hospital.